Hey friends, welcome back. This is Ashley with Uncommon Roots Homestead, and it is time for another June garden tour. It is June 16th, which means we are exactly at the halfway mark. I guess a little bit over the halfway mark, but the garden is changing so rapidly. June is one of my absolute favorite months in the garden, so let's take a look. So before I get started, I've got to walk up and close the gate. I noticed that as I was filming the intro, my arms are shaking. I just milked the cow, which I'm getting better at. I'm getting a lot faster, but it is exhausting. If you've never milked a cow, like, it's for real. These muscles are gonna be huge by the end of the summer. But being here in this space, it's a little bit later than I usually come. I had a really long day at work. One of those days that just leaves you overwhelmed. So one of those days that just kind of takes everything that you have out of you. And being here in this space fills me back up. And I just, I balance a lot. A lot of us balance a lot. I'd say almost everyone feels like they balance a lot. But gardening, homesteading, getting back to the land, it's something that for me adds more than it takes away. There are a lot of things in our lives that they take. And sometimes it's easy to get so caught up in all of those takers that we forget to add things back that give. So, after a really long, trying day, I feel so humbled to get to spend time in this space, to get to end my day milking my cow, even if it means my arms are going to be shaking, to end my day wandering with creation and remembering that there's so much more. There's so much more to life. There are bigger things than the work that stresses me out or that makes me angry or that just leaves me tired. There's more than that. And I would be amiss if I didn't take time to settle in that space. So, with that being said, will you join me on a tour of my garden? Are you guys gonna start climbing soon? Doesn't seem like it. Here is my beautiful empty archway. I was joking to Kevin that maybe we should just remove those plants and just let it be the naked archway forever. Okay, there is so much happening in this space that we need to talk about today. I'm gonna get to the tomatoes in a second, but first, I wanna talk about this bed. Okay, so you may wonder, or maybe you don't, why or how this happens. This bed was absolutely stunning. If you even just go back maybe 2 garden tours, this was lush, it was full. This is what happens to cold or cool weather crops when the temperatures start hitting 90, 95, and you don't provide extra water, they don't have any shade in this spot. This is what happens. The lettuce, you can see some of it has gone to seed. It's very wilty. Basically all of the water, we've had a dry spell again. We had like a week of rain. We had 4 weeks of drought, week of rain, and now we're on, 10 days with no rain again. And so all of these crops that hold a lot of water, like lettuce and spinach, not only is it way too hot for them right now and they don't have any shade, but they're also, all of that water that is held in the crop is just being totally depleted and run down to the roots to keep the plant ultimately alive. Because a plant's sole purpose is to create seed, right? Like, plants don't know that they're going to be food for us. So all of the fruit, the reason that tomatoes climb on the ground, all of that is for the life of that plant. And the whole purpose of that plant is to make more plants. So when a tomato crawls across the ground and sets all these roots and lets the fruit be eaten by all of these bugs, that's actually what it wants. Because when the bugs eat the fruit, the seeds in the fruit are going to be dispersed among the soil. When birds eat the tomatoes, those seeds are going to be spread about. So it just is how the plants keep going, essentially. But when we're trying to cultivate plants for our own consumption, we don't actually want nature to take its complete course. We don't want them to go wild. We don't want the bugs and the birds to eat our fruit. And in the case of lettuce, we don't want it to be wilty and we don't want it to go to seed. But in this case, I knew that lettuce was not going to survive our summers here in East Tennessee in this bed. I actually planted more lettuce back by the trellis because I know it's going to be offered a little bit of shade, and it's going to have a better chance at living. And I'll show you what that looks like today, and you'll see the stark difference. So this bed is basically just waiting to be emptied out. We are super excited to announce that we're bringing pigs to Uncommon Roots Homestead. We have 3 coonies coming to join our farm. 2 are a brother pair. One is a breeder and one is a feeder. And then we have a sow coming from a different farm to be our breeding female. She's actually not even born yet, so she'll come a little bit later. The 2 males are actually going to come join the farm in the next 2 weeks or so. So with that being said, we have pigs coming to the farm really soon, and we are just leaving a lot of these crops in these spaces so that we can harvest them and just feed them to the pigs. So we could give these the chickens right now. If there's any delay or any reason that we aren't going to get the pigs soon, then we would go ahead and just do that, because I want to get other crops into these spaces. So one of the questions that I get is, what do you do in the middle of June when you want to clear out a bed? Like, what do you do with it? What do you have time for? Well, there are a lot of things here in East Tennessee that we still have time for. Our first frost isn't until, I think this year it's in the middle or end of November. So I have a lot of time left in my growing season. What I want to do, I know I need to preserve at least 2 beds for garlic, and I'm going to plant that garlic in September. So that means that I have July and August and then a little bit of September. So at least 2 of these beds, I'm gonna do short season crops that I can rip up and be done with by that time. So that means I'm not looking at winter squash, I'm not looking at tomatoes, I'm looking more at, zucchinis, there's a couple of early melon varieties that would work. A lot of summer squash is short season, 50, 55 days, which is perfect for that. And then there are some beans and stuff. I don't have a trellis system here, maybe cucumbers. So what I'll do is clear out those beds in the next couple of weeks and then put some of those shorter crops in there. With the beds that I have remaining, I think I should have 2 or 3 that could do a longer season crop. I will succession sow. So that means I'll plant my next round of tomatoes and things that I anticipate will start being diseased here in the next 2 months, so that I still have crops beyond that. So here you can see, I was not joking around. This lettuce is pretty much gone. It's just a wilty mess, and it's doing everything it can to go to seed. The biggest bummer here is this. This is my Merlot lettuce. It was beautiful, and I was saving it. You'll learn pretty quickly that I do this. I will have something that is just about ready or almost ready or even ready, and then I save it because I'm like, oh, I don't want to harvest that until I know what I want to do with it. And then I wait too long. That Merlot lettuce is a perfect example of that. It was beautiful, and I just kept thinking, oh, I want to pick that the day we want to eat it. And then I would forget, or we would have a hot day and I didn't come in the morning, and so I didn't want to pick it while it was a little bit wilty in the afternoon. And lo and behold, I just waited way too long and it went bad altogether. So here's your reminder. Just like weeds, if you see them, you pick them. If you see an issue, you deal with it. If you see something ready to harvest, harvest it. Look at this dahlia. This dahlia is about to pop. That is going to be stunning. This plant is just loaded. And my tomatoes, tons of fruit. So I just did a video on tomato pruning just a couple days ago. But as you look at this jungle, You can see it's time for me to get out here with my pruners again. So the thing about tomato pruning is that it's never done. It is not a 1 time a season thing. It's not a 2 time a season thing. It's not even a 3 time a season thing. It's like a twice a week in the heat of the season type of activity. And obviously I am not getting around to it that much. I think I've pruned my tomatoes 3 times in total, like all of the beds. And mostly I've been doing like 1 at a time, like 1 bed or 2 beds or whatever I have time for. So definitely need to keep on that. I mean, this year, we've shared with you, this year is not the year that I am stressing about a perfect garden. I am just enjoying the space and letting it be my reprieve and my sanctuary. And I am just enjoying the time that I have here because this is a hard season for us and we are spread pretty thin. So I'd much rather have wild tomatoes than lose my sanity. The asparagus bed is looking good. And we've got these are Kajari melons. Oh, he's trying to grab on the asparagus. Wrong guy. Wrong place, buddy. Climb this way. These onions are getting really close to being totally ready to harvest. You can see I did not pop all the flowers off, so I let a lot of them go to seed. That's fine. They will still be just fine. What I'm looking for is for these to start dying and kind of falling over, and then I'll know that they have done everything they're gonna do. But you can see they're great sized. The other onions that we harvested actually from this bed, maybe a month ago, they are still curing in the garage. They're just about done. I've only lost 2 of them so far. So as you cure anything, you expect some of it to not cure and to actually just rot. So I had 2 onions that kind of went soft. So I tossed those, but everything else is really firm and drying up really nicely. So those are probably another week or 2 away from us cleaning them up, trimming them, and putting them away for like official storage. We won't leave them in the garage all summer. Cucumbers are coming up nicely. We planted these late. This trellis actually was late to the party. All of my Bermuda grass, that is a weed, needs to be pulled. The asparagus is looking great. I just call this my Mod Podge bed. I've got I think that this is a Thai chili pepper, and then I have some regular oregano. I've got a random eggplant, and then I have this golden oregano that is actually coming back really nice. So if you remember this golden oregano, I thought it was done for. I left it in the container too long and it had dried out and it looked like it was dying. It's supposed to be golden, so the yellow is a good color. All of these weeds, see a weed, pull a weed. But I wasn't sure if it was gonna make it. And when I pulled the garlic out of this bed, I did not amend the soil. And so I just kind of, in a moment of, hey, I want to try to save this plant, threw it in here without amending. And it's doing pretty good. But what that means is that now I have 2 perennials in this bed. So this will probably never be a garlic bed again. But that's okay. I don't mind having perennials sprinkled throughout some of my beds. I have plenty of other beds that I can do garlic in. I try to rotate my garlic every year, so I wouldn't have done garlic in this bed next year. Anyways, okay, so this is super exciting. This is my first year growing these Tramontino squash. My great friend Jill over at Whispering Willow Farm, she grows them every year, and I was just enamored by the way that they look climbing her trellis, so I decided to grow them. And look at, do you see this little guy? They're growing. So here are a couple more beds of things that I'm going to be giving to the pigs. So these cabbage, they were ready and I left them just a little too long and they got sunburned. They're going to seed. They just went bad. I do have a cauliflower here. I might actually harvest him because I don't think he'll get that much bigger. I'm gonna keep the kale and see if he comes back. This kale looks really good. This is a cauliflower, so is that. And then I've got a broccoli over here. I'll harvest everything I can that we will eat. Got another one in there. And then anything that we won't eat, I'll go ahead and, like I said, give it to the pigs. And the chickens would eat it too. Strawberries and the eucalyptus. Look at this eucalyptus. I started this from seed, and you guys, that is pretty impressive. Eucalyptus, the seeds are so tiny you can't even see them. and they take months to germinate. I'm super proud of that. Not only is this section of the garden so fragrant, eucalyptus is super strong, but eucalyptus is a perennial, which is really cool. It's not perennial in my zone. So eucalyptus grows into a tree, which cool, didn't even know that. But what you can do is I can actually dig this up and put it in a container, bring it inside in the winter, and then bring it back out, and it'll continue to grow. So that's my plan with these. I'm gonna let them get nice and strong and start to develop here in the garden through the summer. And then as we get into fall, once the temperatures start dropping, eucalyptus really doesn't like it below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I'll do is dig those up, put them in a container, and bring them in the house. Also, look at this passion fruit vine. Oh, he fell over. We'll set him up here. Let him climb. Look at him go. Passion fruit flowers are gorgeous. If you've never seen one, Google it right now. But they kind of expand, and these ones are bright blue. They're just gorgeous. Look at these lavender babies. I started these from seed, which again, I am super impressed by. I'm not usually like, wow, I did this, but like seriously, have you ever tried to grow lavender? I've tried probably no less than 100 times, and this is the first year I've ever gotten anything substantial out of those tries. And these are like legitimately lavender plants. Like these are all gonna live, I think, and they're just beautiful. I'm super excited. The ginger is looking good. I'm interested to see what these actually look like under the ground, but I'm gonna leave them. They take a pretty long time to grow, so they just get ground cherries are looking great. These are just a general ground cherry variety from Baker Creek. So ground cherries, what happens is these little pods, they dry up and fall off. Sometimes we'll harvest them off, but they need to be able to fall off on their own, or at least be loose enough to do that. That's why they're called ground cherries. Not only do they kind of bramble on the ground, but also their fruit falls to the ground and then you can eat it. So we love ground cherries. I know they're hit or miss. Some people are not a fan, but we think they're really sweet and delicious. So just seeing if anything is ready. Doesn't look like it yet. Look at these tomatoes. This might be my first slightly blushing tomato. This is a problem. I really do need to come in and support these so that they don't snap off. But these are just all so laden with fruit. We also are coming out tomorrow night to do some hornworm hunting. So I will bring you along for that. But hornworms are the tomatoes' demise. And what's interesting about them is that they glow in the dark when they're hit with a black light. So they're hard to find during the day because they're green. They match the tomatoes. Like you can be staring right at a hornworm and never see it. But at night, if you can get a black light and like shine on it, then they stand out. So our goal is to come at dark tomorrow and see if we can catch any. I've definitely seen some hornworm damage, and as we're walking through the garden, if I see any, I'll point it out. Okay, I was talking about that stem and saying that we had to take care of it so they don't snap. Here's a great example of a sucker that was really established that snapped off. But what's crazy is I put this sucker into some water, and he is starting to actually root. And so he is staying alive, growing tomatoes, rooting, and he broke. How crazy is that? So once his roots get pretty established, I'm actually gonna throw him back into the garden and he'll become a whole plant. Now, it's not ideal, right? I don't want all of these plants to just break off, but it's kind of like free plants you get out of it. All of these tomatoes. So this is hornworm damage. See how all of those leaves have been eaten off? And see how the top of that's completely gone? There's one over here. But they just blend in so perfectly. And see, look at down there. Classic hornworm damage. Where is he? What's crazy is that he might be right in front of us. Maybe one of you will see him. I can't see him. But we'll come back. Oh, look at this, even more. See that? See all that? That is classic hornworm damage. Where are you at? They don't come when you call them. Okay, so I want to show you some lettuce that is in a different location and is in a much different position than the lettuce we looked at the beginning of the tour. So this back bed is actually on one side of the trellis and it gets a little bit more shade. And look at this cut lettuce. Look how much better it's doing. It's in great shape. And I've also got some kale that I'm growing for baby kale that's about ready to be harvested. I've got some carrots that are looking great. I've got some beets, and I've got some more squash growing up the side there. My beans are not looking great. They're all looking a little stunted. I'm thinking that this is probably due to the soil, the same thing that's happening on the other side of the trellis. Beans and tomatoes are really susceptible to the type of damage that I think we have. I've got a couple of radishes that weren't ready to harvest this weekend that I'll probably harvest later. And then down on that end, I have my bunching onions. So these are kind of like green onions. They won't get too much bigger. And then we'll eat them. I actually was thinking about growing some walking onions over here because they're perennial. They kind of reseed. You eat them the same way that you would bunching onions. And I'm always looking for things in the garden that can be perennial, that'll come back, that add some more sustainability to the space, and ultimately take a little stress off of the gardener because they take care of themselves and they just come back. So I'm thinking about walking onions. If you've tried them before, let me know below. You guys know this is my favorite section, the herbs. They look fantastic. The sage is just out of control. My chamomile is starting to flower, which I'm very excited about. It looks fantastic. Chamomile just spreads. It's beautiful. My thyme is flowering and gorgeous. My mint, of course, is taking over. My nasturtiums look great. My holy basil, or my tulsi here, it looks really good. And it's so fragrant. My lavender is all looking gorgeous. Here I've got my thyme and my rosemary, and then look at this basil bed. So this variegated basil is absolutely stunning. I actually need to harvest a lot of it and make some pesto. The more you harvest, the more will grow. But look at this, just stunning. And this cinnamon basil, this is the best thing that I have grown in the herb garden this year. It is so fragrant. It's got a little bit of spice. It's absolutely stunning with these flowers. I highly, highly, highly recommend. This is all one seed. That's one plant. Just one. And what's really cool is I'm letting it go to seed, and I'm hoping it's just gonna reseed and that I'll have basil there forever. It's absolutely gorgeous. Like, oh, it's so good. Like, it just kind of reminds me a little bit of the holidays because it does have that like cinnamon, it's called cinnamon basil, but it's got like this little bit of a spiciness to it that sweet basil doesn't have, or like a Genevieve basil doesn't have. But it's really good. I highly recommend. Here are the tomatoes that we pruned together the other day. They're looking pretty good. Got a lot of fruit set on them. Some of them are already growing a ton of fruit. You can kind of see it down here. Those are my San Marzanos. They're just taking off. Look at how much fruit is on this plant. Just this one alone. It's just loaded. None of my dahlias are blooming yet, which is sad, but I know it will come. They're close. They're all close. All of my artichokes are looking pretty good. I think this one has some kind of a disease. I'm gonna leave it. I'm not too worried about it yet. It's kind of an experiment. We'll see what happens. So the rest of these tomatoes, they're all looking pretty good. This one, I'm not seeing a ton of fruit set, and I'm actually seeing some hornworm damage on top of our heavy pruning. So that's never great. We'll see. We'll see if we can catch that guy tomorrow. But all of my tomatillos look great. They're starting to set some fruit, which is super exciting. Okay, I feel like I owe the seed company an apology for this. They came back. Who would have thought? I did not think they were gonna come back. I thought that these sweet potatoes were goners, but they have come back and they're looking really good. So I'm hoping for a great sweet potato harvest this year. There were 35 slips that I put in the ground in these two beds. These beds are about 25 feet in length, 25 by 2 feet. So that gives you kind of an idea of how many plants I have per square foot here. And then I did throw some squash here, and I've got some squash and stuff growing first. Look at these. Look at these. I have never successfully grown eggplant, and I've got 4 growing. This one looks like he might be a little, he doesn't look so hot, but those ones look great. Except for some reason, this eggplant was not as impacted by the herbicide damage as everything else. But this eggplant is super curly and not not thriving. So I don't know what the deal is. I also still need to stake up all of the tomatoes in this bed. I was kind of feeling defeated because they are so sick from the herbicide damage that obviously I tried to prevent, and it happened anyways. And so I kind of was approaching this with like a whatever, I'm over it attitude. But after doing a lot of research, I'm not giving up on this bed. So I need to get out here and stake up these tomatoes. At this point, I think I'm just going to use tomato stakes and some string to stake them up because they're too far from the trellis behind them. But I want to get them up off the ground. I need to do some pruning. So that is on my weekend list this week as well. Back to the squash. Look at these. Look at all of those summer squash. And then I have some zucchini over here. Oh, there you go. Actually, that might be summer squash too. Yeah, I was pretty sure that I did one summer squash, one zucchini, one patty pan. But these both look like summer squash, so you never know. I mean, sometimes I just come out here willy-nilly with the seeds, so we'll see. So this may or may not be patty pan. Now these, I'm really, really bummed. This is powdery mildew already. These are my tomato, gosh, I thought they were melons. See, now what's going on here? This is why you should mark your plants, because I would have sworn that those were melons. But they appear to be some kind of squash as well. And these look like zucchini. And these look like squash. This is why you mark your stuff. Anyways, it is powdery mildew, so we'll see. That usually spreads once they're sick. They're all sick, so I'm just gonna let this go and see what happens, but I'll show you all these seeds that are coming out. So you can see next to all of my, yeah, those are all summer squash. So I don't know what's supposed to be right here, but nothing is. My seeds probably got moved around a little bit. So if you remember, I had planted all of my melons and then all of my winter squash on that line. And I didn't think anything germinated, so I came through and planted again. And now I have tons of plants that are growing way too close together, and I didn't mark anything. So when I came back to replant, I just put more seeds of each variety back in the ground because nothing had come up. I did the same with the winter squash. So I don't know which ones are the duplicates and which ones are the originals, and I don't want to start just pulling willy-nilly because then I might end up not getting any of certain varieties if I just by chance pull everything for that variety. So I think I might treat it as an experiment this year, and I'm just going to let these beds go crazy. I know I won't get as much fruit that way, right? When you make a decision to leave a space overcrowded, you are sacrificing fruit quality and quantity, but sometimes it's worth it. And this time, I think it's worth it. Also, some of my sunflowers are coming up. Now, not as many of them as I would like to see. I am not seeing many down the line here, which is a bummer. These are those giant pumpkins. My plan is to actually let them grow, and we're gonna put a big tarp out right here and let those giant pumpkins grow kind of out of the garden into that space. We'll have to control that. So I'll have to move them and make sure they vine in that direction. But these came from, if you remember, I think I told you in one of the other videos, but my grandma, her home, they grow and enter this giant pumpkin contest every year. And last year they had an almost 2,000 pound pumpkin at their home. And she asked if they could have a couple seeds for me because I have a huge garden. And I just thought that would be a really cool kind of legacy to bring back here and have a little piece of, my grandma here on the farm. And they gave us 5 seeds. I planted 2 of them, and they both came up. So I'm gonna let them both grow, and we're gonna see how big of a pumpkin those pumpkin seeds grow. My corn, a lot of it had a late start, and some of it is just now starting to pop up. So I'm just kind of letting this happen. I've never actually grown corn before, so anytime I'm growing something for the first time, I kind of just hold it with open arms and say, or open hands, and just say, you know what? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Some of the corn looks really good. I have about 6 plants right here. That's obviously not a lot of corn. But funny enough, the corn that looks really good is not the corn I interplanted beans with. So mostly I just have a ton of beans growing down the middle of this row with no support. So I'm gonna have to bring in a support if the corn is not gonna grow. And then this space right here, Actually, nothing popped up. So I might grab some herbs or something like that. I have a lavender in the corner. I might just grab a couple more lavender plants and just put that in that corner there. I don't know. I'm not stressing about it. I want to take you over here before it gets too dark. You guys can't tell, but it's getting really dark out. So my peppers, they are looking great. You can see our wonky bed, but they're just taking off. So look at these poblanos. Look at that. They look wonderful. We're gonna be eating poblanos so soon. Peppers are definitely one of our favorite crops to grow because Kevin is a sauce making, canning extraordinaire. He does everything with what we grow. He cans our tomatoes, he cans our peppers. He is our preservation king. And so peppers are great for that. We love pickled peppers, like pickled jalapenos, pickled banana peppers. We love hot sauce. Oh, so many good things. I'm like, my mouth is watering just thinking about it. But look at how wonderful this bed looks. Super happy with it. My little rose is done blooming, but there will be more. But certainly not least, look at what is popping up. My potatoes. So you guys know I got my potatoes in the ground like super late, like super late. Just a couple weeks ago. But they're starting to pop up. What I do usually is let my potatoes get about 4 inches tall, most of them. So just, I might have a couple that are 4 inches tall right now, but I want to let most of them sprout and get a little bit taller. And then I'll come in and I will add soil to the top to mound them or hill them up. I'll do that 2 or 3 times throughout the season, just kind of creating a little mound for the potatoes, because the way that potatoes grow, obviously they grow underground. And so you want to mound them up because they come out of the sides. So it's really important for them to have more soil and more space, because if you don't give them any soil, you're actually not going to provide them enough space to give you a lot of potatoes. And that's kind of the whole point. So I'm going to do that. All right, friends. Well, it is getting dark. I am hungry. It's been a long day. I have not even been home to have dinner yet. So I think this is where I'll leave you. Look at this beautiful space. Thank you for joining me in the garden tonight. Let me show you the sunset before we leave. Look at that gorgeous view. Do you see that? It's even prettier in real life. Thank you for joining me. You always have a place in my garden. Bye.